What is going on, you guys? My name is Cody Thixton, and this is Interesting Podcast. Coming to you guys on May 6th, 2023 for episode 52, where today we actually have a very, very special guest. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you guys get notified whenever I upload content. Make sure to go and follow me on social media at CodyT503. That's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Let's get right into this. And now, to introduce a very special guest, ladies and gentlemen, Max Burnside.
Saw dudes.
What's up, man? How you doing, bro?
Not too bad, dude. Just showed up here at the venue at DOA, getting ready for some wrestling here tonight. It's gonna be a great night.
Yeah, dude. That is freaking awesome, man. So, like, what do you have going on tonight here at DOA?
So tonight I'm in a 6-man scramble with myself, Derek Shaw, Sandra Moon, Adriel Noctis, Nathan Fox, and Joey Thornton. So tonight's interesting because last month I actually beat Joey. So he's probably pretty mad that I beat him. So he's one I'm watching for. So tonight's gonna be an interesting night.
That's really awesome, man. So like, let's just start like at the way beginning, man. So like, when did you start watching professional wrestling?
Well, like most people, I started when I was probably, I remember like my earliest memories of wrestling was like 8, 9 years old. And that's the good old Attitude Era days with Stone Cold and it was like the tail end of Shawn. I remember watching like Shawn Michaels as a commissioner, like when I was real young. So I remember that. And I wasn't able to watch wrestling. My mom didn't like it at first. And then she saw Stone Cold Steve Austin and fell in love and was like, yes, now you can watch all the wrestling you want. So.
Oh, that is so funny, man. That is awesome. So like, what I had actually heard was like you had actually started with Cameron Starr as like your trainer.
Yep.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
So like,
I started with Cameron Starr.
Did you actually get to meet him and really him training you?
Let's see. It was about end of 2015, started 2016. Where it might even been a little bit earlier than that. I had started coming to BCW shows because I knew somebody that was on the roster at the time and said, hey, come out, check out the show. And being a big wrestling fan, I was like, of course I have to check this out. So after checking it out, he was like, well, we have training Mondays and Tuesdays. You should come try it out. Maybe it's something that you want to do. And that's how I met Cameron Starr is he was running training here for a little bit. Because BCW used to run in the same building that DOA is running in now. So we used to come here and train Monday and Tuesday. And that's actually where I met Cameron Starr.
Really crazy. Yeah, it's really crazy that like the person that was trained by and one thing that I wanted to ask you is like, was it that he taught you that Buddy Rose had actually taught him that actually got passed down to you, like you kind of carry with how you perform and whatnot?
Well, if anybody knows Cameron Starr, they know that he is no nonsense. So if I were to literally tell you everything that I've been taught as far as wrestling, ring psychology, character work, etiquette, literally everything that he was taught by Buddy Rose was passed down to me. So I feel very fortunate because there's only a few people in the area. Actually, that's not true. There's more than a few people, but there's only, a finite amount of people that say that they have like old school training. And I feel like that training with Cameron Starr and learning the things that he learned from Playboy Buddy Rose and Ed Wiskoski, as well as the seminars that he has taken with Dory Funk. Those guys, everything that he's ever learned, he's always remembered it, and he's never changed anything. So, and when I say everything, I mean everything.
time where I guess like you were training with him and kind of like screwed up a little, like like, like once where you just kind of like a little bit?
Yes. Again, if anybody knows Cameron, he's no nonsense. And one of his training methods that I actually really enjoyed was when you would mess up with stuff over and over again, you kind of get in your head a little bit and you start to overthink stuff. And he would literally slap the crap out of you and get you to do what he was trying to show you by getting you to not overthink it and to just do it. And there was one time, early days,
Yeah.
where I think it was like a sunset flip where I wasn't getting quite the grab. Like I was jumping because I can jump. So I was jumping way past the people. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, oh my God, I got to get over him. I have to do this. I have to do that. Slaps me across my face. And he's like, just do it. So that's his method is just no nonsense. Just don't overthink it, because a lot of the stuff that we do is muscle memory. So just getting your body to just not think what your brain loves to overthink about is probably the easiest and best story I could tell about training with Cameron Starr.
That is cool, man. So like Jaden had brought up the fact that like he had once like got introduced to indie pro wrestling. And it's like brought up the fact mostly in the Attitude Era. And it's like, what was the time in which you had been introduced to indie wrestling and knowing that there were shows that weren't just, the WWF or anything major? Like there were something that, you could be a part of. Like, what was that like for you?
Well, it was honestly game changing, because growing up, I knew that there were schools, but they were I thought that there were none any close. And back then, schools were kind of secretive. You had to know people to get trained, and it was kind of a secret society type thing. Um,
Yeah.
and actually, how I met some wrestlers was actually the TV show Grimm that was filmed here in Portland. I did some extra work, and that's how I had actually met a few wrestlers that invited me to the show, and that's what introduced me to the indie wrestling world. At least the in-depth, part of the indie wrestling world. So the TV show Grimm probably, I would have to say is the answer to that one, because if I wasn't an extra and met some of the local wrestlers, I would have never known that there was such a huge independent scene as much as there was. So Grimm, probably the TV show
That
Grimm.
is, yeah. Like, so like, were you, I guess like wanting to be more of an actor, or were you just like picked up on that and then like you found obviously the world of pro wrestling, but like were you wanting to go out and do things and be in TV shows and whatnot?
Well, that's what it kind of started as. Like, it started as I'm also a musician, so I was in a band at the time, and our lead singer was an underwear model, and his talent agent came to one of our band practices and was just like, "Hey, do you guys want to make some extra money just being in the background of a TV show? I can hook you guys up." Like, yeah, sure, why not? And then getting into the in-depth part of like the back end of it, like the producing and the directing of it, that's what kind of got my interest more than kind of being in front of the camera. Um, is I have one brain and I have one look and I'm one person, but I can only portray one thing, so but I have a million thoughts and ideas running through my head that are probably best suited for other people. So, being an actor sounds awesome, but I feel like that I would be better suited behind a camera, being able to help somebody else tell a story, or create a character or develop a character or something like that. So I really got into it at first to get in front of the camera, but once I realized how interesting the back end of it was, I was very much intrigued. And then just being a big fan of wrestling, I just couldn't help but just ask myself, like, I have to try this just to see what I can do with it. And then once I got kind of good at it, I was like, okay, this is something that I can have multiple paths to do. So I would love to be able to wrestle and produce TV, film, music videos. So that's something that I definitely would love to do.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So like you like touch on being able to like do things as far as like developing characters or developing stories and whatnot. So it's like, how does it feel to like kind of be able to like develop a character and to be able to develop and going through that whole process like as a pro wrestler and
In this day and age, developing a character that not only is unique, but everybody can relate to and enjoy watching is very tough. So
yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem that I've had early on in my days of wrestling was trying to find a character to try and develop. It was very rough at first, but watching a character go from a thought into putting it in front of a crowd and modifying it as the months go on and as things happen and as you wrestle different people, different things happen. So I don't have any kids, but I would imagine that it feels the same way watching a kid grow up and watching, teaching it, what and watching it grow up into its own entity is kind of the same thing, like watching a character develop into an entity and watching it grow almost bigger than yourself. I think that's the part that's more interesting for me. And as far as connecting with the crowd, that's the biggest part for me, watching a character develop to where you would like it to be. um, it's not easy at all. It's very tough. You can ask some of the great ones that do it, Drexel, Cleaver, Funny Bone. You can ask those guys, and it's tough to get a character that is unique and fun to watch. And the only way to do that, though, is to develop it and to do things outside of your realm, so that way you can understand, I can do this and I can't do that. So that way, if I want to do this, I have to avoid these things. So um, it's tough. That's all I have to say is it's tough, but it's fun to watch for sure.
Yeah. So I know when I was sitting there with and we had kind of brought up the fact that like there would be some wrestlers where once to get trained, they almost like start to believe they no longer and, tell you something cool. Like I'm a cook, so like I work alongside people in the kitchen, and there would be like some people that because of the fact that they have so much experience, like they no longer will listen to anybody or try to understand maybe their perspectives on certain things. And it's like once you like stop learning from other people or you stop listening is when you ultimately build a ceiling for yourself. So like you've already capped yourself way more than you like being communicating with other people and knowing that like other like no, I don't even think about that. And it's like perfect, like how is that being a pro wrestler?
Oh, continuing training is something, unless you're signed to a major promotion, WWE, AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, that have their own training facilities that you
Mm.
literally are able to gain access to. There is no reason why people shouldn't be finding ways to train or get in a ring and work on things, get with new people. Um, I can't begin to tell you how many things that I've learned from hanging out with the Flamin' Aces, and they're the young guys in the area, trained by Ricky Gibson and Eddie Pearl. Great trainers,
Mm.
and great young talent to watch and also to be around. They understand it, and for me, it's really frustrating when I also see like the older generation kind of create that cap for everybody else, and
Mm-hmm.
by not listening to the younger generation, you're forgetting that evolution is a thing that is always going to continue on no matter what. The only thing that is constant is change. So, um,
Yeah.
for me, I will never stop wanting to like learn from people. I don't care how old you are. You could be 10 years younger than me, 20 years younger than me. Perspectives are always going to be different. So that's a good way to put it, like creating a cap for yourself, but also when others create that cap for you. We like to call them the old heads of wrestling that like to think that this is the only way to do it. We can only do it this way, but they also are forgetting that 2 + 2 = 4, but so does 3 + 1. So there's many ways to get to the equation that we are looking for. So yeah, absolutely. That's very, very, very well said.
That is crazy. So, like, was there ever any time mentality? And I know I've heard about people that will, oh, Matt, this is what I do. You know, like I'm going to really discuss with you a whole lot what we're going to do. Was there any time in which you kind of like struggled with some coordinating and everything just to do, even though like maybe you kind of disagree with it?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to deal with a lot of divas in this industry. People that haven't gone very far still feel like that there's somebody in this business. Um, and I like to think of people like Nick Wayne, who have literally been traveling across the country and across the world every weekend for the last 2 years now, and he is literally the most humble human being I've ever met in my entire life. So
Yeah.
I there has been a few instances where you kind of have to deal with the divas and the egotistical, people. Um, and it's you run into it a lot more than you should. And that's one thing that holds indie wrestling back from being able to be as successful as some of the big companies, is that pride and egos get in the way of, and jealousy get in the way of things like, being able to tell a great story. Not being happy for somebody else's success is one thing too. Like, bro, if somebody else is better than you can't get mad at that. Also, it's cool if you know them and you're friends with them. So why are you gonna hate? Like, it's very baffling to me to have people that want to create something in their head that makes them look absolutely foolish in the long run, but it also hurts the scene when you're not willing to work with one another, or when you're not willing to bend what it is that you're doing. Character work is one thing. If you're a certain character and like, this character does this, that's totally one thing. But if we're, working a match and there's things that we have to do to help work each other and tell a story, that's another thing. But for the most part, we have to deal with some of the divas and egotistical people. And then, of course, there's a nice way to go about it, and there's a bad way to go about it. So I've had to deal with a couple of situations, both good and bad. So it's unfortunate, but it happens.
That is so interesting, man. Like, thank you for that. Like, well, so just one thing I wanted to actually throw by you, just because of, we're sitting here talking about things when it comes to, developing a character and just really diving into things. And I had actually pulled up like a quote that you had actually brought up in your early career, and I was wondering if I could share it with you, and then you can kind of expand on exactly what you were meaning in that time. So you had actually said, and I quote, like, I may not be the biggest, I may not be the strongest, but I'll prove each and every time why I'm one of the reasons you never underestimate your opponent. Hashtag changing perspective, end quote. And so it's like, what did you mean by that? Like,
It's no surprise. I'm 5'7" on a good day, depending on what convenience store I'm leaving. Um, but uh, there's been so many times where not only I've um, been in situations with myself, but I've experienced it through watching other people. And at that point in my life, we were going through a whole bunch of stuff personally, like me and my family and stuff. And also at the time, I was trying to break away from BCW. It still kind of is kind of like, it's not held to a high regard, unfortunately. And that's just from long years of horrible stories. That is a whole nother podcast worth of stuff. But I we wanted to get out of there, and one of the things that was really tough was being able to try and work for other places while being known for working at BCW. And uh, that comment was, half real, half work, where it was like, I'm really upset that, like, I really feel like that since I've worked at this place, that I'm being treated less than, or that I can't wrestle. Then also in like real life, like, you don't underestimate anybody in any sense. So it doesn't matter if you're the biggest or the strongest. You can be taken down by something that you didn't even think was possible. So at the time, I was going through a lot personally, but I was also going through a lot with wrestling as well. So at that time, I was ready to try and figure out what I needed to do to get people to look at me differently than somebody who was wrestling at a not so very good company. So that was what I was going through at that time.
Interesting. That is really interesting. So, like, one thing that I wanted to ask you is, like, how do you know when you're out there and you're performing and you're kind of trying to gauge off of the crowd? Like, how do you know when is the perfect time to initiate, like, some kind of interaction with the crowd to get them involved? Like, how do you go about that?
Um, I, the easiest way to tell when a crowd is ready for the next whatever it is, you have to listen and pay attention to what it is that they're saying, how they're screaming, who's screaming. And again, wrestling is awesome because you can interject any scenario, and it depends on what you're talking about. Different things can happen. So if I'm a bad guy and I'm trying to, cheat and cheat my way to victory, the crowd's gonna hate me. They're gonna boo me. So when right there they're at their I fucking hate you. Oh my God. Is when the babyface fires back up and everybody is screaming. So a lot of it has to do with depending on what kind of story you're telling and being able to take your time, draw out the moments that are worth it. So that way, when you literally can feel when it's ready, when it's time to do, whatever it is that you're going for next. So a lot of it is just listening and paying attention to what the crowd is doing.
That is crazy, man. That is really crazy. So I know I had actually sent you that photo the other day where in the background of the WCWC, and I was just figuring like we can kind of like touch on that a little bit, man. So like you were actually a part of the Hunger Slam, and like that was a long event. So like how was it performing for that kind of just
It was rough.
hours and
Luckily, it was for charity, so we raised a lot of food, and we got a lot of donations and stuff like that. But oh my God, that was rough. It was wrestling Ricky Gibson in a thumb war. At 2 o'clock in the morning was very interesting with no one person in the crowd. Oh God. And then the next day, I'll never forget too, we had D'Lo Brown come in and he was doing some agenting for some of the matches because they were also doing a live event the next week. So he was in doing some coaching, and man, I hated myself because I was just so dead tired by the end of the night. And I was just like, man, I'm probably looking like a schlump to this guy right now. So yeah, that was a fun and interesting experience. Would I ever do it again? Unless it's for a really good cause and we're gonna raise a lot of money, probably not.
yeah, yeah, because you were even probably a part of the Royal Rumble that happened at like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a match that happened. That's for sure.
yeah, I remember that, and it's just like crazy to like think that like back then is when like I wanted to start doing podcasts and wanted to start doing interviews, and obviously like it took a while to do that, but it's still like cool to know that like I'm able to interview one of the wrestlers that I was able to see back then that actually gave me that inspiration. So that is just really cool to say.
That's cool, man. I appreciate that. And like I said, we're wrestlers. We have platforms through promotions to portray our wrestling characters. But it's always nice and refreshing to have people like you create a platform for us to come on here and be able to talk about wrestling, but also how we got here and what certain things, are more interesting to people that want to hear about it. So trust me, we appreciate it just as much as you appreciate us. So
I I genuinely appreciate that, man. That is freaking awesome. So like one thing that I wanted to ask you about is like backstage morale. So like it is very important for there to be a roster in which that connects with one another and understands what each other wants to do and is able to communicate and work events and whatnot. And it's like, have you ever had it where you had gone and worked for a company where maybe the backstage morale was just a little bit off as to compared to what you feel comfortable working in?
I'm not trying to dog on the company too much just because they've been through enough and I've moved past it. But unfortunately, some of the horror stories with BCW back in the day with some of the people that ran it before, there's new people that are running it now, so it's not the same. Um, but um, there was a lot of times where it was very, very hard to be inspired to want to come wrestle, um, because we had, some people that were a little rough around the edges when it came to trying to rally people and to try and guide people. Like I said, there's a right way and there's a wrong way to go about giving advice or telling somebody your opinion, right? Like there's a right way and a wrong way, but um, yeah, unfortunately, ever if the backstage doesn't feel right, then unfortunately I don't go back to that company and work for them again. For the most part, the companies that I have worked for have been awesome. Unfortunately, WAC's not around anymore, but WAC was always a great locker room to be into. DOA is a really great locker room to be in. Drexel, he helps run this place, and he literally has probably the best backstage morale that there is. There is nobody else that I would like to praise more for being able to create a platform for all of us and for wanting to actually see the success for people. So, backstage morale here at DOA is probably my favorite, only because everybody is happy to be here. Everybody is welcome to help out. Everybody is not in a crap mood. Everybody's okay to speak their mind without having fear of somebody saying, well, that's wrong. So on the opposite side of things, there is greener grass on the other side. You just can't always think, there's greener grass on the other side. So being a DOA has made me appreciate the backstage morale that we have, and it has also reminded me of what I don't ever want to be in ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like, have you ever had, I guess, like those thoughts where you were, I guess, like going on the road and you were just thinking about your career and you had thought about all of the companies that you had worked for, and you kind of were just sitting there thinking like, okay, so I know how this person run things, and these are the stories that they're able to bring, and these are the superstars that I'm going to be working with. And it's like, have you evaluated all of the companies and then kind of made, I guess, like where you felt most comfortable? Would that go along with DOA, or was there another company that just maybe offered you a little bit more when it came to wrestling certain stars and being in certain storylines that really drew your attention?
Um, DOA is a big one. I love my position here at DOA. Also 5cc up in Bellingham is probably the place where I've actually been able to wrestle some of the bigger names that have come in to the Northwest. I've gotten to fortunately wrestle Leon Ruffin. I've gotten to wrestle Adam Brooks. I was supposed to wrestle Vinny Pacifico 2 weeks ago, but unfortunately, due to venue issues, none to Logan's fault at all, they had to cancel the show. But fortunately, with 5cc, that is probably the place that has kind of given me the biggest push as far as like career and wrestling bigger names and having a bigger story than other places. But DOA is up there as far as um, keeping me an important person, and I appreciate that greatly. So,
Yeah, yeah, that is freaking awesome, man. So one thing I wanted to ask you about is like, how does it feel to like work in like a five-sided ring as compared to a 16 by 16 or 18 ring?
it's different because it's not corner to corner, rope to rope. It's rope to corner. So certain things that you do in the ring, you have to modify, which I love. There's some people that are kind of iffy about it, but I love it. It creates a new dynamic. It creates more thought process behind what you want to do in the ring, and also like it's different. Like everyone's seen a 6-sided ring in TNA and Destination 6, but a 5-sided ring, it's kind of weird, but it works. So
Yeah. Yeah, that is really cool. Like I saw that you had actually performed in the Nebula Star ladder match. So it's like how is it, I guess, being in a ladder match? That
uh,
is kind of like
excuse the boys in the background. Sorry, there's Jaden and the Flaming Aces.
oh, I gotta come and get the insight.
Got to a little bit. That's funny.
Oh man,
But
that is
the
awesome.
North Star Nebula match, that one was a little rough because we didn't use a regular ladder. We used a Gorilla ladder, which is different than like an A-frame. An A-frame opens up like a regular ladder, but a Gorilla ladder, you have 2 big buttons you have to push at the top and then open it up. So it was a lot more interesting to try and figure that out. But luckily, I was the smartest one out of the bunch. Who would have thought the stoner of the bunch was smart enough to, work the ladder to get to the top to get to the North Star Nebula? But if it wasn't for Jaden, though, he kind of saved my life a little bit. Chris Brady was about ready to take my head off, and I don't know, man. I think maybe the superhero inside of him just kind of overpowered and said, no, I can't have you take out my boy. So if it wasn't for Jaden, though, I'd probably be, competing with him for the North Star Nebula right now. But that match is probably top 5 of my favorite matches of all time to be in. So
That is awesome, man. So like when they had actually made it so they had the Nebula Championship, like when first introduced to that and like had the idea thrown by you of that chip actually coming to life.
well, that was always the plan. But the person that was making the belt, unfortunately, it was taking a little bit longer. So it was introduced. Oh, it was introduced about a year ago, and before that, it was a trophy. But when I got told that it was going to be a belt, because I was told that the North Star Nebula is pretty much the Money in the Bank gimmick, where I have a shot at the 5cc World Championship at any time. So when I got told that I'm getting a championship belt, I was like, oh, it's a belt for a belt, but how is that going to work? And so at first I was like, is this going to work? And then after wrestling guys like Adam Brooks, and being able to have to like display that not only do I have this thing that signifies that I can go for a title shot at any time, but I'm going to prove when I do cash in that there is no question that, oh, Max is ready to take out the champ. Max is ready to take out the champ. I'm proving to everybody that I have this for a reason. Even though Jaden made the save, I'm still going to prove why it still would have been a fight between him and I for the North Star Nebula. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. So like you had just brought up, like you had already known that something that you would want to do, like having the North Star Nebula with you and Jaden. Is there anybody like right now where you sit in the roster that is set out that you're like, that is something I want to do?
I think with my main goal in wrestling, I want people to see Max Burnside on a marquee or on a match card and go, oh, that's going to be a fire match. And I think the only way to do that is to wrestle guys that have the same mindset, that like they want their name when they're read to people to be like, oh, I need to go see this match live. So I think ultimately that's what I'm aiming for, is no matter what kind of match, when you see my name, you're expecting a really good match. You're going to be entertained, and you're probably going to either leave home crying, laughing, or some other feeling that you're not used to feeling. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, I really hope that you actually perform at the Roseland 6, because I know that that's going to be coming up, like the date and time and everything. It'd be badass to see you in person, just knowing you and watching some of your stuff. It would be really awesome, especially to be in that environment like the Roseland.
I would love to be on Roseland 6. As a musician in bands growing up, the Roseland was a place that I got to play at, fortunately. So to be able to do a wrestling show there, oh, that's right now, that's the little dream of mine, is to work at places that that I got to play in as a band. So it would be awesome to work at Roseland 6.
That would be cool. Yeah, so like I know I had been a lot of Jaden's vlog and adventure, and you're a pretty big part of that. It is always cool to like see you in those little segments. And do you remember any times where it was like you have like a really funny story of just like traveling and going and doing something where somebody did something stupid, or you guys were just having like the funniest conversation?
Uh, there's a few of them that are on the vlog, and there's a few that are not on the vlog.
Mhm.
We like to have fun. Let's just say that. We like to have fun and shit talk and do all that good stuff. I think one thing that sticks out on my mind is we have a buddy. His name's Pele. He used to train, and unfortunately, some things had happened, and he's not training right now. He's trying to get back into it, but life has a way sometimes. But he would travel with us all the time, and my man would just say some of the most outrageous things that would just make us all laugh. And I can't get into too many of the stories just because some of them are just, I can't say them also without cussing or getting into kind of graphic detail of like how idiotic sometimes some of the stuff that he had said, but it made us look at each other and go, what? And unfortunately, some of those aren't on the vlog, but yeah, we like to have fun. We like to have fun when we travel.
That is really crazy, man. Like I can't even imagine like actually having, I guess, that ability to like book shows, and then like you also meet the other people that you're associated with that are booked on the same show. And it's almost like you guys get news that you guys are being booked together, and you're like, oh shit, hell yeah, like I'm gonna be able to, see you back there. So it's like, how is it like finding out about all of your friends that are also gonna be booked on the same event that you are?
That's like anytime I find out I'm on the same card as NDS. Those guys are freaking awesome, and they're from Minnesota. And I wish they were out here more often because those guys are a fucking hoot. Excuse my language, but those guys are awesome. Those guys are amazing. And every time I see my name on a card next to theirs, or they're booked on the same card, I get so excited because they're super fun. They're super friendly, and afterwards we like to go and hang out and have a good time. So anytime NDS is on the same card, I'm always happy. So.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I know I had heard, I think through one of your videos, that you like to be on the beginning of the card. Like what makes the beginning of the card as compared to the main event or in between the card so special to you that like you enjoy that so much?
To be able to start the show or end the show is a chance to be able to get the crowd to remember you the most. Starting the show, everybody's super excited to see some wrestling, so you have to go out there and make sure that the first match, everybody is invested. And that's the same thing for the main event. And so if you're on first and if you're on last, those are the two spots to have the greatest chance to be the most memorable out of the whole night. And you can do it in any other spot, but those are the easiest chances to have people remember who you are. And if you do really well in those spots, then it's obviously cake to make sure that you're remembered and people want to come buy your t-shirts and want to watch your videos. So being first is important to me because I like to get people into it. And so being first is a essential key part of being able to do so.
That is crazy. That is really crazy. So one thing I wanted to ask you is like when you're a professional wrestler and you're traveling on the road and you're going to all of these shows, and there had to be a time when you were training and everything where somebody came to you and said, okay, so like you need to like not just be doing this stuff for free anymore. Like you need to start charging, people for your service. You know what I'm saying? And it's like what at what point was that where somebody kind of pulled you aside and said, "Hey, this is now your point." You know what I mean?
Probably some of the first times that I was able to travel to Vegas, and
Mm-hmm.
wrestle for Versus, and really some of the first times that I got to be outside of the Northwest. I got to go to Pittsburgh as well, but Vegas was definitely that time where I remember it being like getting pulled aside and saying, "Hey, what's your rate?" And saying my rate, and then them saying, "Nope, you need to double that right now." And so Beast, down in Vegas, is the guy that did that for me. And yeah, that was probably about 2 years ago now. So
Very interesting. So like when it kind of like coordinates with that, like how important is it as somebody that travels and whatnot to sell merchandise and to get that backing so that people want to come in and do buy your merchandise and everything. Like how important is that to a pro wrestler? I apologize.
it's probably as important as being a good wrestler in the ring. Being having anything, an 8x10, a bracelet, a keychain, anything that people can wear or display at their house for people to ask questions about, and to get people interested in,
Mhm.
is just as important as wrestling itself. It's how you make extra money on the road. Um,
Mhm.
it's probably the easiest way to make money on the road, especially if
Mhm.
you're able to get
Mhm.
things made at a not so high price. So
Mhm.
it is quintessential to have something at the merch table for people to come by.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's got to be like really cool. Like, so like, have you ever like maybe like seen somebody or like, is it always like weird to look out in the crowd and then like you see somebody with your T-shirt on and like it's kind of gonna like make you smile a little bit and be like, oh, it's like that is so cool, you know?
Absolutely. Especially, when people wanted to buy it and not because, like, they felt obligated to buy it, right? Like some people, I've seen some fans feel like that they feel like they have to buy merch from this person or this wrestler. And when
Mhm.
people buy merch from me, I feel like it's because they want to. And so when I see somebody wearing my t-shirt in the crowd, it makes me feel really good, and it makes me feel like, inspired to want to create more merch and try and put out things. I want to put out merch that is also different than everybody else. I want to put out a t-shirt and I want to put out an 8x10, but I also want something that is different than what everybody else is coming out with. That's kind of my mentality. I always will be kind of, I always want to stand out. I want to do something different. I don't care if you're zigging, I'm gonna zag. So um, it makes me feel really good. It makes me feel really good to see something that is worn in the crowd for sure.
That is really awesome. So like, have you to like certain, I guess, dispensaries and maybe try to have like some kind of like or something where you can represent a certain dispensary based off of your character.
I mean, I've never thought about actually reaching out to a dispensary itself. I kind of figured that if there's a dispensary out there that feels like they like what I'm doing and they think that it might benefit not only them, but it can benefit myself to have a partnership and be able to be endorsed by some place like a dispensary. I figured that'd be one of those things that it would be awesome, but I don't think I would reach out to a dispensary. Only because like I also, I don't want to be overbearing and like in someone's face, like, hey, sponsor me. Hey, sponsor me. Like I feel like a 16-year-old amateur skateboarder that's trying to get sponsored by their local skate shop, sending in their mixtape. So so
Yeah.
I try to avoid stuff like that, but I'm always open to being endorsed by a dispensary. In fact, there was a dispensary that was open, Stony only. They were open over in Clackamas, but unfortunately they shut down last month, and they sponsored the DOA, the show itself. So a lot of my matches were sponsored by Stony only, but I mean, I myself have not yet been sponsored by a dispensary, so maybe soon.
That would be really cool, man. So like when did you actually come up with the name Max Burnside? Because when I had seen you in the WCWC, when I had sent you that photo the other day, it like sent back like all of these different memories and being like, what is this? Because of course that is freaking awesome. So it's like, how did you like come up with that name, and like when did you actually really attach to it?
Um, so when I first started wrestling and started training, I wanted to I wanted to come up with a name that was different and unique. There's a theme with me trying to be unique and different. But I also wanted to represent where I was from. I was inspired a lot by the band Slater Kinney. That is actually a local band that has Carrie Brownstein, who was co-star in Portlandia. So that's her band, and they named the band off of the street that they lived on growing up and played shows on. And so I thought that was really cool, and I thought, man, that's an easy way to show an homage to my hometown. Is the street that I grew up on and grew up around, and is well known for not only Voodoo Donuts but the Burnside Skate Park. There's a lot of cool things that are associated with the Burnside name, so it was very easy for me to be like, that's what I'm gonna do right there. Is Burnside.
That is really cool. So I had actually seen that you had also done a instead of Tony Hawk's Max Burnside Pro Wrestler. So like when are we gonna get that game, man? That sounds awesome.
Oh man, hit up Activision. Let's get that going. Oh man, just me running
That would
around
be
different
so
skate parks. Don't even do tricks. Just go around, just wrestling people, suplexing.
yeah. Yeah, like instead of like having to go and ollie over the bum, like you have to go and suplex somebody out the bowl.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah,
Let's
dude,
hit up
that would be
Activision right now. That sounds great.
yeah. That is freaking awesome, man. Well, I just wanted to ask you before we actually end up wrapping everything up, man. So like when you are actually standing backstage and before you exit the curtain, is there ever a time in which like you remember what exactly you want to be in a pro wrestler, and does that like amplify you before you actually get to go out and do your thing?
Um, there's a nervousness that happens no matter if there's 10 people or 500 people in a crowd. Um, there's always a nervousness right before you hit the curtain. And I think a lot of where get inspiration to get out the curtain and to really appreciate what I'm doing is that nervousness right before we hit the curtain. Um, and it I don't know. It's also kind of hard to explain because um, most people, it's kind of like a fight or flight feeling where it's like, oh my God, I can't do this, or I need to do this. And that's the best way to try to explain it is a fight or flight feeling, but we have no choice but to go out there and fight. Our name's on the marquee, our name's on the match card, our music's playing. We need to go out there right now. So um,
Mhm.
it helps kind of bring everything down a little bit from kind of wild thinking, and it brings it down to focus mode. So nervousness is probably the biggest thing that I remember every time right before I hit a curtain.
awesome, man. And just everything and being able to for all of the pro wrestlers that not with or you or anybody who's going to interview, just everything that you guys do, like the for going out for family, like entertain us. I appreciate
it. And we feel it every time that we hear people in the crowd and spend their own hard-earned money to come to these shows. We feel it in everything that you guys are screaming and yelling. I can't say how much I appreciate it. I know it's cheesy and it's corny, and every time it's always weird, but if we didn't have fans at our shows, we wouldn't be able to wrestle. So if it wasn't for people like you who are paying the ticket to come enjoy the show, we wouldn't be able to do this. So the thanks goes out to you just as much as it is to us. So
well, I really appreciate it, man. Well, I hope you have a good night, man. And this will actually be IWTV.
This will be live on IWTV tonight. They also do the replays shortly after the live. So if you're not able to catch it live, as soon as they're able to, I think it's like 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer just because of how it works. But the replay should be up real soon if you're not able to catch it live. So watch it live on IWTV tonight, guys.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, man, for actually joining us here on Interesting Podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate this.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Later, dudes.
All right, you guys. So that was Interesting's podcast interview with Max Burnside. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Ring that notification bell so you guys get notified whenever I upload content. Make sure to go and follow me on social media at CodyT503. That's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And remember, I will actually be back May 21st at 2 p.m. to be interviewing Playboy Zay Perez. It's going to be freaking awesome. And I cannot wait to bring you guys another professional wrestling interview coming out of Portland, Oregon. I'll catch you guys later.